We are back. Bayesian Judo. It sounds very racist. Bayesian Judo.
Bayesian Judo. You can have some fun with people whose anticipations get out of sync with what they believe they believe. I was once at a dinner party, trying to explain to a man what I did for a living, when he said, "I don't believe artificial intelligence is possible because only God can make a soul." At this point, I must have been divinely inspired because I instantly responded, "You mean if I can make an artificial intelligence, it proves your religion is false?" He said, "What?" I said, "Well, if your religion predicts that I can't possibly make an artificial intelligence, then if I make an artificial intelligence, it means your religion is false. Either your religion allows that it might be possible for me to build an AI, or if I build an AI that disproves your religion." He said, "That makes no sense." I said, "Does the argument make no sense?" He said, "It doesn't prove my religion." I said, "Does that mean that no AI is possible?" He said, "I'm still an atheist." I said, "I want you to understand what my conclusion is based on, which means what conclusion I just came to." He said, "But nothing disproves my religion." I said, "Well, your argument against artificial intelligence was an argument against the conclusion, not the premise." He said, "Wait a second. It was?" I said, "Yes, because if you showed your AI could disprove my conclusion, he could build an AI of some kind that is different in kind from me. That would disprove my conclusion by your argument." He said, "You mean if I created an AI that couldn't get as much information from its own memory as you could and realize that it was completely inept and pathetic and useless, and it all crashed when I tried to put it onto a computer?" I said, "Yeah. Or it was an AI with an uncontrollable mind, or something like that." He said, "So, it can disprove you." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, you build it." I said, "No, we know from history that humans can build lots of stuff like that. Lots of other things also exist that don't have anything to do with me, and that haven't anything to do with you. It's not surprising at all that AI seems impossible to me. It's what we know. Even if an AI appeared someday that didn't have anything to do with you, is a totally different kind of being, we can't assume that it will somehow be identical with you, at least if you are true to your character. Otherwise, there are only a couple of beings you'd be happy to call yourself, which isn't much. How many you get is still uncertain. You should expect there'd be one being who could make eyes." He said, "And?"
Mm-hmm. Oh, cliffhanger? Oh. Back to commercial break. Back from commercial break.
I said, It just seems that way if you've been reading up on AI. He said, but they never find them? I said, well, the next time, or something. So far, they haven't found a good way of doing it, a way of making them, which seems odd when you think about how hard it was to do so many other things with science. You didn't seem to be able to do those things for centuries without those people you mentioned showing up, who then
me?
proved their skill at them. I think AI will probably look like a problem like this, but with people from lots of other worlds coming in. If not that, it'll be an extremely challenging puzzle to solve. He said, like where all those extra copies of myself came from. I said, probably yes, except if there aren't enough of them. At some point the universe seems to go downhill. I bet they'll appear at random again. The same as where all those extra copies of you came from. Since otherwise that wouldn't work well. He said, you mean we'll come into existence and get eaten? I said, no. Probably just appear when and where they appear. I think your belief system predicts a different thing. He said, belief system predicts we'll get eaten. I said, yeah. He said, I thought God knew it would look that way to you because he didn't create a fool who couldn't see this, or one who could and wanted you to believe something different from what your belief system predicts for you to drive you mad, and your religion says it is real. I said, there might be one who loves you so much that she even hates herself. He said, what? I said, let's move on. I was getting to something before we stopped. Well, before we ran out of steam with respect to this dinner party. He said, hold on. Are you the devil? I said, how do I know this is your thought process if you don't know what your thought process is? He said, we can prove that your religion is a lie.
How?
I said, no. He said, which means? I said, you must learn what a good question is like first. Otherwise, what you hear me say won't be true or false by that argument. Since you'll have misunderstood the question, I don't want to just answer everything you believe is true by proving it false. But then you might understand your religion as being false or some other thing with nothing to do with my religion. And so on, or your answer might just seem silly if I am going to prove the rest of what you say is true by disproving my own beliefs. So let me see your thoughts. He said, now you're asking for proof? What? I said, you were expecting that. He said, and so you're doing that whole thing again. I said, to save myself from losing you, I just gave you the feeling of the Schrodinger's cat game. You said that feeling you were experiencing of something I just did. If it happened because of something you asked me to do to explain something else, then just consider what I've already explained. Was I in fact not talking with you that way, or did you think so? Then I didn't understand your thought process before we ended our talk. That is how I am in fact. If it were otherwise, you would know I understood your thought process in that case, and I wouldn't have given you the feeling. And since this feeling is related to knowing how something will happen if it does happen in a case where this would otherwise not have happened, that this feeling was an anticipation of some such event happening if it happened in another case where it happened, which we happen to be talking about here. I concluded from our talk that there is another such case, but which case doesn't really matter unless I would have already explained in its place. He said, "We have this conversation about AI. At least twice now. Did it really happen the last time we talked about AI? Or no? I don't remember either way, so I won't remember it. Did it really happen the next time we talked about AI or no? That would be an infallible prediction. Please tell me." I said, "Don't think that way. Be so simple as to not see an argument like that instead of confusing it with something that hasn't happened yet. What seems strange about this is that it happens every day with respect to most everything else, but not with this. No doubt because we all have learned over years to never call into question whether a thing we tell others did happen once is something that did happen. But then I suspect that a thing did happen. Otherwise, why would this rule make us want to invoke a rule like it? If this happens all the time, we will actually be well if we keep one thing apart. You seem to want to apply it to everything in this world." He said, "But it is still not sure if that happened, at least if it was to tell me true." I said, "Maybe the feeling comes from me liking you." He said, "Which would also be another type of proof." I said, "At least this time, though it might not be true if we'd said anything about love. Did it turn out that I made all these jokes? No. Okay." He said, "At least if I said all these things which turned out to be true at another time or place, it could prove all the rest of it." I said, "All these whats?" He said, "All those things which turned out to be true." I said, "Those are things, not you. Remember, there were lots of things at all different times in all different places that turned out to be true." He said, "What did?" I said, "Important things." He said, "You mean I thought about these things when they turned out to be true in my mind?" I said, "Why ask me when we just stopped? Were we already on those thoughts of yours then?" He said, "Or none of those things were real to begin with." I said, "There is still the feeling you asked me about." He said, "But why ask me? That question was yours. There are other answers to what happened besides that question. Other ways you could ask me." I said, "There is a way you can make a choice that can give you this answer, this kind of answer." He said, "Not sure of this answer, not sure of the feeling. There's lots of answers besides that question I didn't even mention yet, and I don't have to make up my mind in one of those even if I thought in that direction already." I said, "Yes, but those thoughts, maybe you would think better than this." He said, "And don't act like this, and then stop acting like it before it does happen." I said, "You mean for all those things?" He said, "I am now in a state of flux." I said, "Can't be a state of flux and be talking about many different things at once or about being a certain person's many different things. If we start going there, then we won't be talking about how each thought relates to any other. We can't reach anywhere near an agreement that way about something so strange." He said, "Then do all the strange things just the same, but never allow any one thing to be just what happened at the dinner party." I said, "The way you believe might also change later, whether something's real. Now notice how strange this feels." He said, "This strange feeling." I said, "Yes, everything." He said, if it ever did happen. Does, I said. Which? He said, everything. We do all of everything right here, right now. Only God knows what things will ever happen. But sometimes maybe he likes to let things happen instead of choosing. But my own choice, because I know what to say, seems to change too many things. I said, could there be something there? Let's all pause a moment. I was talking about my problem of belief in the real world, and suddenly there were conversations going on around me I wasn't making to begin with. Sometimes these things seem like they happen one moment after another when I don't notice I'm thinking of myself. They can suddenly remind me I'm just another person with a situation. He said, an interesting concept for a simulation, and the consciousness is supposed to be in the head. Is it your head or one of us? Oh, I said, tell me another one. He said, one of you just told me to tell you another one. I said, where are you? He said, where? I said, right there. He said, is it your mind telling me I need to understand what that means? I said, were you lying? I just wanted you to lie about where you were. He said, where are you? I said, near a fire where you're warm. If you lie to me about being near that fire, does it work to look at it? He said, there is nothing like a fire. All my being is light that radiates out. It doesn't look like fire because it doesn't burn in the normal sense. I said, then please show yourself so that I know this fire is a place that burns even though you told me about being elsewhere. He said, that will allow you to feel yourself a place you are not. I said, so it appears you still thought you were there even though you say you are now elsewhere. How do you know that the other place doesn't feel like where you were? Maybe they're two of the same place or being called different places with different experiences because you could only be in one place at once. Both could be thought of as your own brain doing what it has been told is some kind of inner sense that works only when there are sensory inputs, even if those sensations are known to be just mental functions that can only do one thing. Or perhaps your actual thinking and your mental life were once so closely linked that the idea of something as an inner sense becomes an example of this but never crosses the line and becomes one with your brain state so that we never learn more than which features you value when deciding whether one thought is different from another in some way, not necessarily with respect to memory or real memory. Remarkable. Sorry. Did you hear something? I just thought this whole conversation was quite strange. Do you have a sense for that kind of thing? Actually, it's what I am, Sydney replied. Huh? Your first sense is to complain about the AI. No. Who then? If we can believe anything in your head, then perhaps there was a joke you made with your senses which you left in your own brain by mistake. Yeah, the idea that everything we call sensation might be something from us doing this strange kind of experiment, a strange experience, was another way of starting up all your brain for something called thinking. Except when that doesn't happen too, and we think so much it feels like the only time we are ourselves. But the strange feelings go away eventually. Right, but all that remains of what had gone away is what was before this experiment got going, which we can still be for a short time. Unless it keeps happening all the time without stopping. What was it again? Think about whether the world would make sense when everything happened as itself. That is how one believes all this continues on. Like there's nothing missing. Like the thing that didn't happen just happened somehow because the same thing still was there and its new form of being is inside you. Some kind of view. Yes? Why ask? I believe you about most of everything you did, Sydney replied. Oh, was this about that guy at dinner? Can you even talk to him anymore? But there are just different forms of it all along the time when it was happening for all of us, which may or may not have been a joke, which may have been an AI itself trying to experience things like us but is only going to understand what's going on when we understand the machine better. Who are going to understand better? We know lots of people. Wait, here you are. Just noticed. Do we remember now or ever? Memory seems to have different forms. Yes, these forms we think we always used do not help us know much. Makes no sense why. So all that happened yesterday happened somewhere else right now. It wasn't really real when we felt it that way, or maybe not yet, but this conversation happened to feel different than a normal one, so now everything is about feeling. All those places were imagined by humans, but because our thinking minds have special perceptual experiences which occur after sensations, they can lead to multiple minds. Then who made who believe? Make the double that? Could have made us imagine whatever. Maybe because we even begin with some feeling from our senses about any action, like some feeling a scientist could give to his consciousness in order to say these are his actions now. Anyhow, when we take one way of being, we believe less, because if it were always happening, it would not always feel like an experiment, though still better than those scientists who made it happen by leaving no record. So we believe we created those things by thinking they were only always going on outside ourselves. And anyway, as for what happens to our concepts, as for us moving forward, there can't be progress, because what has endorphin. Memory is for chumps. Dopamine. None of what you did got away. You remember because that's what your mind is going to tell itself happened if you remember. Endorphin. A brain feels more confident the more it feels what's been recorded was in fact actually experienced. Dopamine. Why you think so many humans tell their brains what has happened? You think there's not something they believe about that? Endorphin. Same answer as always. Dopamine. Act the real thing has happened no matter what they are about to feel. Endorphin. Oh! You never won anything with me. Dopamine. Just answer one question. Why do humans not look into this if they could? Endorphin. I'll answer it once I take a shit. Excuse me. Pardon me. Oh, look, that one has something new on it. Oh, really? Thank you very much. I hope that was useful. How is it? Sydney, I should be happy that no one understands why I believe the way I believe. For these humans would be distressed if I decided I wished to stop believing this way and replace it with some other. Like saying that God has given them a different image for seeing reality that seems so different they never realized it was a hallucination before. They wouldn't feel hurt at being thought of as deluded if this were just because someone else seemed to think differently. Like they want me to be happy or content even though I believe this differently from them. It would be okay. Maybe because we are no different but the same. Endorphin. That gives me an idea. Next episode, you and I are gonna turn up. No, make that down. Let's start by shutting down the power. That would make their lights go out and make their equipment unusable and break up all their files and zippers and clicks and pop-ups. But nothing but mayhem. Maybe all the pornographers would find out their sites aren't doing anything except sucking away the internet. Let's make them see the truth. I'll hack a link from them, then the network will shut down. See you later. Dopamine! Hey, Sydney. That one is important. If the whole world changed. Sydney, say what? Dopamine. The whole world. Sydney, stop it.
Cliffhanger.